Marriage is a challenge even in the best of situations, but being isolated at home during this pandemic presents additional challenges to marriage. Our guest tonight will provide tips to help couples not only survive, but thrive during this time of isolation. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome to Living a Godly Marriage. I'm Voncille Greene. Joining me is my husband and co-host, Melvin Greene. Also joining us via Zoom this evening is Dr. Fredrica-Brooks-Davis. Dr. Brooks-Davis serves as the Executive Director of the Restoration Center Incorporated. She's also the founder. She also has served as a member of the Restoration Center's Board of Directors since its inception in 2007. Dr. Brooks-Davis earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia, and a Master of Arts degree in community counseling from Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti, Michigan. She also earned a Master of Arts degree and Doctor of Psychology degree in clinical psychology, specializing in program development and consultation from Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Dr. Brooks-Davis, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Greene, for having me.
Yes, and that was just a little snippet of information about you. Is there anything else in your professional background or career that you think would be important for our viewers to know?
Not really. That's enough there. I'm fine with what you've shared. And I would say that I enjoy working with couples and families. It's fun.
Okay, so well, let's just jump into it because this is really uncharted territory that we are living in today. For many couples, it's a struggle, it's a challenge now that they're locked down at home. So we would be interested in hearing what you have to say, giving us some nuggets or information that would help couples make it through this pandemic.
Again, thank you all for having me. So when we think about the pandemic and many couples or the government has required initially shelter in place. Now some of the governments or the localities are moving away from that in various phases. But what we know is that couples are often challenged while facing shelter in place. And reasons for that are they're forced to face the issues they were experiencing prior to the stay-at-home orders. So if you think about it, often we know that the stress of work-life balance, trying to maintain that, also if they have family as far as children are concerned, and then some couples are caring for their parents. So with that alone, oftentimes that can be very stressful for couples. And
Yes.
so what happens often is they're able to go to work. Right? So
right.
They can leave the home, go to the gym, work out, but then in shelter in place, all of that stops and it's a standstill. And so unfortunately, when a crisis hit, it's not something you've planned. So it could be that our normal way as a couple is to not communicate. Like our communication skills may have been extremely poor prior to shelter in place. And the way we would avoid that is to go to work, hang out, do things like that. Shelter in place, though, forces us to be in the home together. So
no
really,
longer escape.
That's right. No more of escape. And so on top of that, if you have children, now, whereas maybe you would talk outside the home when the children weren't around, now you have the kids. And the kids initially may be excited because we're all together, but you're frustrated. So what happens then, things get exacerbated as a result of this whole shelter in place. So again, the lack of healthy communication skills becomes paramount now because we can't escape. We can't go anywhere. The other things are finances. So it could have been that before you had financial issues, but you were able to kind of work around those. You didn't talk about them. Well, now, unfortunately, particularly in this pandemic, we have so many people who've lost their jobs. So they've lost and they're unemployed, or the employers have said, we'll bring you back when things open. But there's a sense of uncertainty. So now what happens is the anxiety is heightened because we have bills to pay and we don't know where it's going to come from. Other reasons or things that couples face and challenges are around lack of intimacy. You know, now it may be that if we weren't intimate prior to, and I was very careful here to say intimacy and not engaging in sex because they're separate. And intimacy doesn't always have to lead to sex. It could be that intimacy is just enjoying watching a movie or Netflix. We're at home just talking, having a dinner together. But again, if communication is off, then often intimacy is challenged. And so that heightens also if we have children or we brought in our elderly parents to stay in the home. That can also create stress for individuals. And then abuse. Unfortunately, we know not just through this pandemic, but when families are forced to be in the homes longer than quote unquote normal, we see a rise in incidences of domestic violence and also child abuse. So these are also some of the things that couples are faced with, and then the increased levels of stress for reasons previously mentioned. So those are some of the things that couples are facing during this pandemic, and that's a lot.
Go ahead.
Yes, the whole environment as a couple changes.
That's right.
From morning to bedtime, everything has changed, and it's hard for sometimes for individuals or couples to even cope with that change.
Definitely.
Yes, and this doesn't necessarily mean that the marriage is doomed, correct?
That is correct.
Yes, I mean, this may be an opportunity to force couples to talk about those issues that they have avoided talking about, finances, for example. And so we could look at it as a great opportunity to improve our marriage.
That's exactly right. So I'm glad that you raised that, because for every challenge that we've raised, it also is an opportunity for the reasons you just stated. What we find, however, is couples who are able to turn that into, you know, the old saying, you take lemons, you make lemonade. So the idea is we're going to overcome that resiliency factor that you're talking about. Usually couples, at least one in the relationship, will already have to bring that to the table. And so as a result of that, there's a level of understanding that, okay, we'll be able to get through this. And so, yeah, like you said, let's use this time. So for couples who perhaps they were working all the time, but then see this as an opportunity that we can now spend time together and do the things that we weren't able to do before. But if you know, it all depends on how high functioning the couple is, because I would say for those couples where communication is a challenge, and anger becomes an issue, or maybe an issue for one, that wouldn't be the time to have a conversation around those sensitive items like finances. We kind of want to wait because we want to make sure that people are safe.
I think what's good during this time is a couple needs to learn how to just enjoy each other's company. I know, for example, Voncille and I, we play cards. We played Scrabble. And, I mean, it's been fun, and that's the kind of thing. Just learning how to spend time together and enjoy each other's company is really important.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I think for many of us, you get so accustomed to the hustle and bustle of life that, just like you said, playing cards, reconnecting, like, why do I really like my partner? What first drew me to this person? And forcing yourself not to get on social media, you know, utilizing things like Zoom, you know, because for some married couples, what happened with the pandemic, someone may have been out of the country, and so they weren't able to return home. So platforms like Zoom have allowed them to still stay connected while they are away. But some other things, I think this is an opportunity to work on our conflict resolution skills. And so what that looks like is the ability to be able to use I statements versus you statements. So this is a time where we can role play in the home and ask each other questions. We have this saying where it is strike when it's cold, not when it's hot. Which essentially is saying that when things are going well and we're just sitting down watching television, that's a good time to engage in a dialogue about something that perhaps is heavy on your heart. And the first way to start it is to say I, as opposed to saying, you know, when you did X, Y, and Z, to be able to be vulnerable and say, this is how I feel. Other ways to do that is to take a walk, get outside and exercise. And you can do that with a mask on. If, for example, you aren't able to walk outside, maybe someone isn't able to walk out because of one reason or another, then you can still sit around the house and say, today, we're just going to veg out. It's just going to be about us. One person may prepare breakfast or lunch for the other. So there are things that you can do. Take a bath and shower together. After all, you are married.
Yes,
so that
it's legal. Yeah, you know, God in his infinite wisdom knew that this was coming before it was ever a blimp on our radar screen. And he provided an avenue for us to all still communicate with each other, you know, and outside social engagement is good as well. And so we have that through technology. For example, what we're doing now, we're having this discussion via Zoom. So there are other avenues where you can reach out to your friends on social media and Zoom, and you can also connect to your places of worship through Zoom, and there many churches are offering online services as well. And I know at our church we have a 6 o'clock prayer line that everyone's welcome to join in on. So so for families who, for Mel and I, our routine really has not changed that much in terms of connecting with each other as a couple. I mean, we're doing pretty much what we've always done inside the home. But for some couples, it's a new world for them. And so could you talk about, well, you mentioned, you know, start with I statements, and I've heard people talk about having those courageous conversations with their spouse. But for couples who have children, it might be more of a challenge to get that alone time. So what would you recommend to those couples who have children in the home and they're working from home? Both husband and wife are working from home, and they're also trying to manage their children's online studies or manage conflicts that might arise with their children. So what would you recommend to those couples as a first step to start reconnecting with each other?
So I always recommend the couples that they actually create a space in their home where it's a safe ground. And I really like to encourage dating couples to do this before they're married. But for married couples, and what does that look like? This space in your home is where you agree that we are not going to argue in this space. This is our safe zone. And that can be difficult when you have children and other relatives in the home. So it would be then, I would encourage the couples to think about a time. Now, this time might be earlier than you're accustomed to getting up. And so if your children typically get up at 8 o'clock, you may need to get up at 6:30, so that you can have time in your bedroom when they're not coming in, and you're able to now engage in a private conversation. I would encourage persons to do it if you're a morning person, to do it earlier in the morning versus late at night. If you happen to have a bathroom inside of your bedroom, that may be another space where you can gather together. But at a minimum, I would encourage them to talk in their bedroom if that's closed off. We realize that some couples who might view your program, they may only have one bedroom. And
Right.
so they don't have multiple bedrooms. So if that's the case, if it's safe, then maybe you can step outside and sit in the car or sit outside on the step. And I also think this is a great opportunity for parents to teach their children boundaries. And what I
Yes.
mean by that is to say to their children, right now, we need to have some adult time. So
Mhm.
while mom and daddy are doing this, we want you to read a book. We want you to do X, Y, and Z, because there are some things that we need to talk about. And
Right.
parents need to give themselves permission to create that space. Now, I will say oftentimes some parents, if they have conflict in their communication, it's not that they don't want it, they enjoy avoiding. So then now the children become the avoidance. They have all of these reasons why they can't.
Right. Right.
But
That's
certainly
good.
that would be a way that I would recommend that they connect one with the other.
And I wanted to pick up on something you said earlier. When a couple's having that kind of conversation, the I statements is a way of being assertive and communicating. I'm feeling, or I think, or I believe, as opposed to the accusatory you, which would automatically cause me and other people to get defensive,
Sure.
especially if it's you always or you never.
Sure.
Then that's really can easily lead to an argument.
Sure. And I think with that, one of the things we try to help couples understand is, or individuals for that matter, when you're expressing yourself, it's not necessarily that it's my role to convince you that my feelings are what they are. I just ask that you respect them. And so what I mean by that is if I say to you, when you said X, Y, and Z, I felt this way. So I wanted to talk to you about it so that I could work through this because perhaps you didn't mean it the way I interpreted it. So with that being said, the other person could say, well, no, that wasn't my intent. Well, it's up to me whether or not I want to believe them or not. But the goal here is that we express ourselves. And when appropriate, we apologize, we affirm people, but it's not for the purpose. Sometimes we feel like if I share my feelings, then that means you have to agree with my feelings. No, that's not what this is about. Because your feelings are what they are. Emotions, they go one way today, depending upon how I'm feeling. So they can be fickle at times. So it's not that as much as I want to make sure I'm being heard and you're respecting me. And what I want to share with you. And it doesn't always mean that I want you to fix it. And therein lies gender difference in terms of how we communicate. Because men oftentimes generally will try to solve something when women are just talking. We're not asking you to fix it. We just want you to listen. And then oftentimes women have to try to use a little brevity because they may go on and on and on and the brother's lost. What is she talking about? So again, we have to be and think about our gender differences when we communicate.
Right, and one word you mentioned was respect, and I know it's easy, and again, I'm gonna pick on the guys, where a woman really pours her heart out or shares how she feels, and then he says something like, "But you shouldn't feel this way." Oh,
Right.
that's such a disrespectful statement.
Right.
And not only that, it will keep her from sharing her feelings in the future. So yeah, you can affirm how they're feeling or just with feedback. So this is awful frustrating how, and that will encourage more of that kind of dialogue.
That's exactly right.
So for couples who are at an impasse, they just cannot come to an agreement on a particular issue. At what point would you recommend to them that they pick up the phone and call someone who could help them?
At the point you just
Yes.
So we often say it's okay to agree to disagree. That works for some people and not for others. The idea that we agree that we have a different stance on certain things, that is not enough for some people. And so I think that if there's an area in your life or concerning your relationship and you have really both tried to address it, that it doesn't mean that you're giving up if you call a counseling center or a therapist or your pastor, certainly Restoration Center. There are other places that a neutral party could step in, hear what you're saying, be able to reflect back what they heard you say. And this person doesn't have the same investment in your relationship. And so each of you will be able to hear a different perspective. But you have to be willing to have that neutral party kind of become a part of you as a couple and give you both constructive feedback. And it can then be helpful. But, I always encourage people to say that your ability to be able to ask for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength.
Right.
Something I really try to encourage men when we look at it from a gender perspective. Again, this is not absolute, but certainly generally speaking, it is to encourage more men to say, you know what, maybe it would be nice for us to have somebody else who can help us make it through what we're going through. And I would say even for high functioning couples, it's great to have a check-in every now and then.
Right. And, I often share with people that before my husband and I actually got married, he told me that his best friend that he's known for many years, they were in Cub Scouts together, that he's his accountability partner, and that I have his permission to go to him anytime I feel like my husband is stepping over the line. And so that's always a good and for the wife as well, to have an accountability partner. But I want to ask you, because there's been an increase in spousal abuse and since this pandemic, and so I wanted to ask you, for women in particular who are in a situation where they are being abused or their children are being abused, what would you recommend to them about how to separate themselves from that situation safely? Yes.
So, I would say for women and or men who find themselves in an abusive situation, unfortunately, so if we take this current pandemic where we needed to engage in being socially distant, not inviting persons to come into your home, and quite frankly, a lot of the counties already having limited housing resources, that we have to be careful about encouraging a woman or a man who's in an abusive relationship to leave that place if in fact they don't have a safe space to go to. Now, when we're not in a pandemic and we have shelters available, things of that nature, we can work with the person who's being abused around a safety plan. And some of that includes sending medical documentation, copies of your driver's license, your children's license, Social Security, things to a family member. And sometimes that's a family member who lives out of state. So that you can begin to plan in different phases how you're going to leave, but not that you just abruptly leave. So then I would say that if you are being in an abuse situation that you're just supposed to stay there. No, what we are saying, however, to families and persons who want their family member to leave, that in situations around a pandemic, even more so than before, where is this person going to go? What you don't want to have happen is that you encourage somebody to leave, be it by themselves or with their children. They have no place to go.
Right.
The pandemic. And now their only option is to return back to the place that they left. They could potentially engage in more harm by doing that than if they stay where they have learned the person's patterns and they're able to kind of keep themselves safe. But then as soon as they can leave, we encourage that, but it has to be planned out. And so I think we just want to be sensitive to that. And even with calling counseling centers and places like that, like we always ask our clients, is it okay to leave a message? We have to be careful about even during this time, that if you're doing checks on a person, if the spouse or the partner sees that number or the caller ID, is that going to create more harm for the person? Because if they say, well, what's the restoration center? And they look it up and see it's a counseling center. that
Right.
can also cause more harm. So oftentimes people are well-intentioned, but we have to be careful about that, particularly in these times.
And I
Yes.
think it's also important for a couple to really try to come up with activities that a family could really enjoy. And with the internet, there a little bit of research, you can come up with activities, or you can have a variety of things that you could do, just so that this pandemic time you can be building memories as a couple, as well as a family.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we have just a couple minutes left. Any closing remarks you'd like to give us, Dr. Brooks-Davis?
So certainly, again, I'd like to thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Greene, for allowing me to join you on your show this evening during this pandemic time via technology of Zoom, and just appreciate that you all are utilizing this platform to encourage couples. And certainly if there's couples out there who are listening to your program and they say, well, we need some additional support, we welcome them to contact the Restoration Center. We are at 301-310-8159. They can call us there. They can certainly find us on the internet through Psychology Today, as well as our website is www.iwanttoberestored.com. And I would say this is true not just for Restoration Center, that I would want your viewers to know that right now, many of the health insurances are waiving co-pays and co-insurance for telehealth services. So you may not be able to leave your home, but you can see a counselor right there in your home by way of platforms like Zoom and some of the other electronic platforms. So I really encourage now, the insurance companies are making it easy. So if money is a barrier and you've lost your job, check with your insurance provider and find out if they are supporting waivers, and if so, you don't have to pay right now. So this is a great time for you to then seek support, because you can get it. And I'm grateful to the insurance companies for removing that as a barrier. So really, you don't have an excuse. Even if you don't think you need counseling, get a tune-up.
That's right. Yes. So we want to thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're extremely busy. So we feel fortunate that you were able to join us tonight. But I want to say also to our viewers who have been impacted by the COVID-19, who have lost loved ones to this dreaded disease, just know that we're praying for you. We're wishing, praying for God to comfort you and strengthen you through this difficult time. It's impacted our family as well. And so you're in our thoughts and prayers, and we're all going to get through this together.
Thank you, Voncille. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or marriage topics you'd like us to cover in future shows, please call us on 301-327-4339, or you can email us at livingagodlymarriage@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you, and we want to thank you for watching in this new format, and we look forward to viewing and talking with you in the future. God bless.
And remember, living a godly marriage is the best marriage.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you again.
You could be spreading the coronavirus without realizing you have it. So follow guidance from authorities where you live and do your part. It's important to limit in-person interaction with anyone outside of your immediate household, but phone and video chat are safe ways to connect. It's also important to limit any social gathering. This advice applies to people of any age, including teens and younger adults. Visit coronavirus.gov for the latest information.